Hello, everyone. Pastor George here with today's Bible study recap. And today in Bible study, we looked at Nahum chapter 3. So, this is a continuation of what I was talking about on Sunday. So, Nahum has that beginning poem of judgment against Nineveh, but against empires generally. And then you have it move into chapter 2, where it is a much more focused poem about what's going to happen to Nineveh, the city. You'll see lots of battle language there. And then Nineveh in the third chapter, it's a woe. So it's basically proclaiming doom on something. And this is where you get to see parts of like why Nineveh was so hated by the people, but also what God is going to do in the face of that, and what this means just generally for how like there's a cycle of empire, and that God is going to bring justice down on these things, and that's what the end of Nahum is all about. So it continues by talking about what the city is going to look like, and you'll see it's not great. There are dead bodies. This might be describing the armies that are coming when it talks about the horses and stuff like that, the horsemen. That's probably not the Assyrians. That's probably their enemies that are charging to kill them, and you see that it's going to be bad. But it starts to use this language of the prostitute. Right. So this is the ESV in verse 4. And all for the countless whorings of the prostitute, graceful and deadly charms, who betrays nations with her whorings and people with her charms. So this is where you start to see this language being used, and this language is used before. Oftentimes, this is done to reference the beguiling power of sin or of bad behavior. In this case, is the one who has been doing this, right? They've been beguiling and charming other nations, selling themselves to them in order to get power and prestige. And so the rest of this is basically that God is going to expose them and embarrass them. And you see that in verse 5 and in verse 6. And so people, right, are going to go from fearing the Assyrians to openly mocking them, and seeing them as weak. And indeed, right, Assyria is going to fall, and it's never going to be as powerful as it was. And God uses the example of a great city that the Assyrians attacked and destroyed, Thebes in Egypt. And the Assyrians went in and overtook it. And he talks about how, look at all the allies they have. Because, again, one of the things the Assyrians thought would insulate them was the fact that they had these alliance systems. But it talks about, hey, look, lower Egypt, Cush, these Berber tribes off to the west. All of them, Thebes thought it would protect them, but it doesn't, right? It's still destroyed, and destroyed by you, the Assyrians, right? So you can see how it's doing it, right? So he's saying you also will be drunken, and what that means is to drink from the cup of God's wrath. You will seek refuge from the enemy, and it just explains how all of their society is going to wither away, right? Their fortresses are like fig trees; they're ripe to be taken. The troops are like women, right? As in they're not trained and not capable of fighting for war, as women in this time were not. You have to draw water for the sieges, strengthen your forts. You're going to do all these things, right? You're going to be like locusts. You're going to have so many, but that's not going to stop them. And he talks about princes and scribes, and how these are actually, well, the prince's title is an actual Assyrian term taken from Assyrian into Hebrew. So there's debate about exactly what that means, but it's officials, right? These are officials and rulers of the government, and they are going to flee. And he actually uses this language of how locusts will sit on fences in the cold, and they'll kind of be there, but as soon as the sun hits them, they'll fly, right? It gives them energy, and they fly away. So that's what these rulers are going to be like. And so basically, Assyria's leaders have fallen asleep at the wheel. They are not prepared. And when the justice of God comes, there's nothing that they can do, and they deserve it for the evil they have done, right? And that's how the book of Nahum ends. So it ends with this very strong condemnation and warning to Nineveh. And like, again, yes, this is a focused scripture given to the people of Nineveh, the people of Judah also, as they are hearing this. But it's not just for them, right? This is very applicable to us today. This is why we have to be very wise with who we elect, who we care about when it comes to what we care about when it comes to our nation, where are our priorities, who do we want to honor first and foremost above everyone else. And that is the important thing to take away from Nahum is how do we balance all of these things, and not fall into the temptations of Nineveh and Judah and of so many other nations in history. All right, we want to be on the right side with God. So just wanted to remind us of that. That's what we talked about today. I will see you guys tomorrow for an episode of A New Thing. Lots of weird stuff happened while I was gone, so we'll take a look at some of that. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Peace out.